I really like the late Republican era. It's so interesting. The people who lived and shaped it are so fascinating. Sulla and Marius, Caesar and Pompey, Crassus too. But I've read up on them so much, I wish there was someone else in that era who I just didn't know about. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot about Rome for a first date. It's just I've got to go. Ever hear of Sertorius? How how'd you get in our house?
Sawa, young legionary. Wait, that doesn't feel just right for this. It feels like there's about to be a bit of a change in tone and video style. Let's see what I have laying around to accompany that. This, no. Maybe, oh, certainly not. Oh yeah, yeah, this will do nicely. Now we're living. Oh yeah. Quintus Sertorius, the legend. A Roman general who fought a guerrilla war in Hispania while rocking a stylish eye patch and getting divine information through his pet albino deer. Yeah, his life was like a movie with a certified fresh rating from Rotten Tomatoes. While he was no Caesar, Sulla, or Pompey, he was still very impactful in the transition from republic to empire. He was a very strong B-tier candidate for impactfulness, but when it comes to compelling story, he is nothing but S-tier. He is a relatively obscure figure in Roman history, and I've attempted to rectify this by telling it to cashiers at Walmart, awkward first dates, and even resorted to making memes in an attempt to bring Sertorius to the relevancy he deserves. Thus, I struck out to do this the only way I know how. Create a series of videos detailing his life on a YouTube channel even more obscure than the man himself. Let's go! Okay, before we can get to Sertorius, I'm going to give a very brief overview of Rome leading up to Sertorius. In 509 BC, Rome kicked out their monarchy and established a republic. This made them despise kings, and thus they built their government to keep one person from gaining too much power. Rome kept growing and eventually fought and then defeated Carthage in the Punic War. This was that Hannibal guy who was particularly fond of elephants and taking them on midwinter ski trips through the Alps. Once Carthage was defeated, Rome was the dominant nation in the Mediterranean. While many wars were existential threats throughout their history, this era is marked by no other nations posing a real threat to the survival of Rome. Throughout the time of the Republic, there was the conflict of orders. This was the name given to the struggle between the patricians, the nobles, and the plebeians, the commoners. The Republic started off as an oligarchy controlled almost entirely by the patricians, but over the years the plebs fought for more rights and it became to look more like a true republic. One of the most effective and certainly most dramatic methods was the succession of the plebs. This meant they would physically leave the city and the army and go sit on a nearby hill, forcing the numerically few patricians to cope without the masses. Or more easily to remember, the plebes said this.
Screw you guys, I'm going home. But Carmen, we're trying to... screw you guys, home.
The plebs were able to become senators, to marry patricians, and they had political positions created like the tribune of the plebs. The conflict of the orders had a massive impact on the politics of Rome, and roughly around the end of the 2nd century BC, Roman politics was informally split between the populares and the optimates. Very simply put, populares found their support in the people and were for change to the status quo. And the optimates found their support more in the Senate and the patricians and fought to maintain the status quo. This is very oversimplified, and it's better to view it as generalized labels we use today versus ancient political parties with clear-cut party platforms. So if the conflict of the orders was like a game of basketball, each side abiding by the rules and mostly playing fair, the murder of the Gracchi brothers was Ron Artest fighting fans in the stands during Malice in the Palace. The rules kind of went out the window. Tiberius and Gaius Gracchi were brothers who were popularists and while trying to conduct radical change were murdered by the Optimates. Depending on if you wear an Optimate or a Popularis jersey, you'll see it as either two men trying to make themselves king who were justly slain by the Senate, or two heroic martyrs that were brutally and lawlessly murdered by an oligarchy trying to maintain its power. This video isn't long enough to tackle that right now, so look into it a bit more and you can decide on your own. Okay, so for Apocalypse Bingo we have polarizing and inciting deaths, a long-running social feud between the haves and the have-nots, increased corruption and lack of civic virtue, and a militaristic society moving away from the citizen soldier to a professional soldier who follows generals instead of the Senate. Oh dear, yeah, we're pretty close to the ledge here. Let's see what the last square says. Oh no. It just says power-hungry men who will manipulate the state, the people, and the army without regard for anything other than their own personal power. Well, let's hope these two upcoming leaders aren't like that. Alright, with all seriousness, I do feel like it was necessary to set the scene that Sertorius enters into. Without that understanding, one cannot understand his life. And if you already knew all that, well, at least you gotta see Cartman join the succession of the plebs.
Screw you guys. I'm going home. But Cartman, we're trying to... screw you guys.
Now, onto the life and death of Quintus Sertorius. Our story begins in 126 BC when a man Sertorius was born in Nursia, a town in Sabine country. The town had been a longtime ally of Rome, and this was enough for them to be granted Roman citizenship a century and a half ago, allowing Sertorius to be born into a minor aristocratic family, into the class of the equites. The equite was a social class directly below that of the senatorial class. He was a smart and athletic child, and when his father passed, his mother ensured he received the best education and opportunities he possibly could. Plutarch would describe Sertorius as excessively fond of his mother. Okay, quick rabbit hole here. The Romans were really weird about relationship between male and female, whether it be mother and son or husband and wife. They considered it effeminate and weak to actually love your mother or your wife if you were a man. While this sounds kind of insane, it was true. Two other contemporaries of Sertorius, Gnaeus Pompey and Marcus Cicero, encountered this for having the audacity, the gall, the lack of discipline to actually love the women they were married to. A truly ghastly and un-Roman display of affection. But seriously, mainly I just wanted to include this so that when I tell you the eye patch wearing, single combat challenging rebel general was a mama's boy, you get the full effect. And don't worry, we'll get to how he got his distinct eye patch later. Okay, getting out of the rabbit hole. His mind sharpened and his body yoked, he went to Rome to become an orator in his mid to late teens. While he would have studied and trained for this was a field incredibly crowded by the offspring of the upper classes, and Sertorius was not at the level to rise above. However, he did make an impression on a young Cicero, who would later write, "Of all the totally illiterate and crude orators, well, actually ranters, I ever knew, and I might as well add completely coarse and rustic, the roughest and readiest were Quintus Sertorius." Ooh, yeah, that is not a good review for our man Sertorius. Those old school burns really do hit differently. Although Plutarch does cite his youth as a potential reason for Sertorius' shortcoming. So, Sertorius decided to change his career, moving from an orator who used their words as a weapon to a soldier who used their weapons as a weapon. He joined the Roman army under Caepio as a military tribute, a role that was reserved for the youth from senatorial and equestrian families that acted pretty much as interns to the Roman commander. Their main purpose was to watch and learn from their commanders and learn to become soldiers and leaders. So, battle interns. So along with his body of friends, yes, this is what they called the collection of tribunes and other staff that accompanied a Roman commander, Sertorius set off with Caepio's army to confront the Cambri, a confederation of German tribes who had been handing Rome defeats for the last decade. Along with the army of Consul Gnaeus Maximus, the Romans brought 120,000 soldiers to face this threat, and so Sertorius, along with his body of friends, fought together, and using the power of friendship, Sertorius became one of 10 survivors out of a 120,000 man army that was utterly massacred. Oh. Yeah, that's not good. That's literally a 99.99% casualty rate. Ouch. While conservative estimates had the troop number and casualty rate at a much more realistic rate, it is still very clear that a very large Roman army was routed and butchered. So much so that it created a panic in Rome. This panic would be a factor that led to Gaius Marius gaining power not seen before by a single Roman since the days of the kings. But we're not there yet. Back to the steadfast Sertorius successfully swimming to secured safety. Sertorius would survive the battle by swimming across the river Rhone. Plutarch describes his flight as, though he had lost his horse and had been wounded in the body, he made his way across the Rhone, swimming, shield, and breastplate and all, against a strongly adverse current. So sturdy was his body, and so injured to hardships by training. So if it wasn't already confirmed Sertorius was a stud, he was up there as a Michael Phelps of his day, swimming in full armor against a raging current with an injury. So despite surviving the battle, it is noticeable that the first battle Sertorius participated in was a crushing defeat, one filled with wholesale slaughter of Romans, one he barely escaped. Any sort of false notion of easy victories and comfortably won glory were quickly expelled from the mind of young Sertorius. Instead of a lifetime of victories won effortlessly under the Roman banner, as so many of his contemporaries enjoyed, Sertorius not only saw the brutalities of war, he saw the Roman juggernaut brought low by people Rome considered barbarians. If shaken by this, The 22-year-old Sertorius' actions did not portray this, and as quickly as his career changed from an Olympic swimmer, it changed back into one of a soldier. He quickly joined another Roman army under the command of Gaius Marius, although he was quickly back into the job market, changing his occupation from soldier to spy. That's right, Sertorius, already an all-around mensch, is about to transform into 007. Too cool. We will cover his change to Quintus Bond next episode, as well as we will move past his beginning forays into military life and get into his taking of command and becoming the indomitable general he is known for, as well as his ties to Gaius Marius that would define the next 30 years of his life. So that brings us to the end of the first episode of the life of Quintus Sertorius. First off, I would like to say a massive thank you to Dr. Philip Matyszak and his book Sertorius and the Struggle for Spain. This video is in no way affiliated with him, but for this video series, he is practically the patron saint. While I use Plutarch and other sources for these videos, Dr. Matyszak's book is my primary reference, and I would absolutely be remiss if I did not give credit where it was due. If Sertorius sparks interest in you, I would highly recommend checking out his book, as while being incredibly informative, it is a very easy read. As well as there is a lot of Latin and ancient words and names, and there's a good chance I messed up at least a few of them. I do my best to make sure I pronounce these to the best of my abilities, but if I bungled some, please let me know and link me the correct pronunciation. It's a dead language, so I appreciate some slack, but I do aim to get better with each video. Obviously, this was a pretty large departure from my previous video style, but this is what the channel was always meant to be, a combination of historical education and entertainment. I will continue making the Young Legionary learning videos, as I believe increasing interest in history in the younger generation is incredibly important, but the channel will become more focused on this style of videos with Sertorius series for now. So clearly I've covered a lot of ground, and I'd love to hear your input on any of it in the comments. As you probably noticed, we have no surviving statues or coins of Sertorius, and we lack any physical descriptions, so feel free to imagine him however you like. One depiction I like is by Jacob King. Really has him looking like a rebel general. If you like drawing or even making memes, please send them to me, as I love to include one or two at the end of these videos. I would love to have some interaction with those who enjoy the video, and for those who didn't enjoy it, be sure to send this video to your worst enemy to torture them. If you want to continue to hear the Chronicles of Sertorius, subscribe to keep up with it. And so now, be like Sertorius, and tell your mom you love her.